Hey everyone, thank you for watching. In this video, we're going to show you how to draw hair on an arm. So grab your pencils and let's get drawing. The first thing you need to do when drawing this is just kind of outline the arm. And in this case, we're just going to draw the arm kind of until the wrist, and we won't draw the whole hand or anything like that. The wrist kind of goes over here, and the hand would continue, right? So that would be kind of the hand over there, and of course the thumb over here. We're just going to kind of draw over here, and we'll just draw some patterns of arm hair, really. I might try to sneak in a little bit of drawing of a vein, so kind of draw somewhat of a vein on the arm as well. So let's see if we can put that in, and let's get going. So they say that hair grows on average 1 centimeter per month, but I don't know if that's the average of like the hair on your head as well as, you know, body hair in terms of the arm. By the way, this is a man's arm, so typically there's a little bit of hair on the arm. I would believe that the 1 centimeter a month is more for the hair on the head, but I think the hair on the arm still grows at a slower rate. And yeah, it's something to keep in mind. And also, if we're talking about facts, hair is actually made of mostly of a protein called keratin. So that's something else that I just wanted to share with you as well. I'm just going to draw a little bit of shading around the bottom. And the first reason to do this is just to create a little bit of a 3D effect before we start actually drawing the hair. So this is not the hair on the arm. That would be a lot of hair and very confined to the bottom. This is just the shading. So whenever I kind of do shading on an arm, I try to draw with a little bit of curvature to try to show this is kind of a curved up spot of the arm, and we'll do a little bit on the other side as well. I really like to put on the, use my smudge technique to kind of let this kind of come together, and you can see that kind of looks a little bit better already. We're also going to just create the ever slightest bit of a vein that would kind of exist right over here. And in order to do that, you just draw a bit of a line of the vein like that, and then just shade on the outer part. Just one of the parts typically on this side. Let's say your light source is coming from over here. You might have just a little bit of shading on the other side of that vein. You might benefit from grabbing just the slightest bit of a darker pencil, like an 8B, and just do something like that. And then what you'll do is you'll just kind of do that a few times. And just, we're going to keep working on it, but that's just the starting point of that vein as well. So I guess what we'll do is we'll draw the outline, we'll do some shadows, veins, and then we'll put some hair on the arm. They say that body hair also regulates your temperature, so it can retain heat when we're cold, if you're ever cold, and then it also keeps you cool on hot days, so really interesting. So we did the starting point of a vein there. I think what we can do is maybe get another vein just over here, just like that, and we might connect that vein to just a piece like that. And maybe just over here as well. So we'll kind of curve it as the wrist curves down, we'll kind of get that vein down. So just grab your 8B again and just kind of just create the ever slightest bit of shadows again on the left side. The light source is over here. And then use your smudge technique to kind of let this kind of bleed into the page. And we could also create just the slightest bit of veining over there as well. All right, it's really, you know, it's just about being subtle when you do this as well. You know, obviously everyone is a little different in terms of their veins and their arm structure and all of that. So what we want to do is grab a finer pencil and just create a tiny bit of rising with this vein. I mean, in this case, like, I don't know, my vein is kind of over here, but in this case, you might want to create the sense that this vein is kind of rising up just a little bit, and this one over here. And in doing so, you might want to just have some lines that kind of rise up. That might give it some lift, and that might really give you a little bit of a 3D effect over here as well. So that's all I'm doing. Now we're just going to continue to use the smudge technique that we use and just try to really, accentuate that and bring this out. I like to use the eraser just to redefine some of the vein lines, and in doing so I might erase some of the work I just did, but that's okay because we're just gonna re-smudge and bring things back together. So nothing wrong if you feel like, hey, I just put some lines down and I'm gonna erase them. Well, it's more important to kind of get some of this shading like a little more visible, right? You'll see too, once we get the hairs on the arm, I think you'll see that it'll look a little more realistic as well. So, stick with me. It will come together, promise you that. How are you doing, by the way? Are you drawing? Are you watching? Let us know. We'd love to know in the comments. We certainly like to know how you're doing, and if this is something you're working on for like a project or a drawing or what have you. But we do like to know, so leave a comment. So we're gonna keep working on that. We're just really gonna keep that going as well. This part is a little too drastic. I think we need to kind of bring out some of the shading over here and a little bit over here as well. Yeah, just like that. The other thing that I would like to do is grab something like a 5B and just add a little bit of 3D effect over here. Let's just add a little bit of shadowing just over here. The 5B is really nice because with just a little bit of pencil lines, you can get some nice smudge technique done. And you can even go back to where you started on the other side and just kind of put a little bit more down if you want as well. I think we know that hair turns gray in time, most cases. It's considered a normal aging process, and I guess that's true for arm hair as well. So I don't have any gray arm hair yet, but I would guess in time it's bound to happen. So just another interesting fact, but it is considered normal. They say that the buildup of gray hair is actually due to the creation of hydrogen peroxide due to wear and tear of the hair follicles. So that's actually the reasoning behind that. And again, the age varies from person to person, so it just depends. So you can see I'm just continuing this process. I'm gonna bring this down and just kind of to try to make it as realistic as possible. I'm just gonna bring that down as well. Just extend it, right? That's really what we're doing there. So then in order to get just a little bit more lead in some of these spaces, I just want to add in some lines like this and just very, very widespread, add some cross hatching across the space. And then what we're going to do is just use our smudge technique to kind of bring this all together, right? This is really what I'm doing here. And notice the shading beside the vein is fairly light, like it is actually fairly light, and it doesn't really become too wide, because that vein that you do see there really is for the most part pretty thin. We don't have like thick veins by any means, so it's something you want to just be aware of as well. I'm going to try to just continue some of the realistic part over here. I feel like it doesn't look as correct, because I'm not doing the whole hand. Or what I might do is just erase the piece over here. I think that might be a better idea as well. Okay, so we're just going to keep at this. If the vein over here kind of runs along the arm, we might want to add some shading below, because this is also the kind of the bottom side of the arm where you might have a little bit of shadows existing. Even though you have a light source coming from there, the light source doesn't really get right under the arm if the arm's on a table or something like that. So you would be well advised to create just a little bit of shadows below at the kind of bottom side of that arm, right? And that's all I'm doing over there. However, on the other side, you can continue to add some more shading and shadows just like this. And that's because we do have some light source coming through. So at this point, what I'm really doing is just letting everything kind of bleed together. We drew the foundation of some of the veins and the patterns. In my opinion, they were standing out quite a bit. But once you kind of continue to put on some of this, effect, it does start to look a lot better. So we're going to keep at that. We're going to move over to an 8B, just add a little bit more shading over here, right? Kind of like that. And if you're still not happy with some of the shadows, just use your 8B and just kind of go from bottom out and curve it just a bit. That's kind of just showing that space there, right? For me, I always use my smudge technique to kind of let everything become one. Okay, so the veins are there, you could kind of see them, and that's kind of how you want them to look. You don't necessarily want them looking like they stand out or stood out. How they looked before, they looked kind of like a sore thumb, right? No pun intended. I'm just going to clean up some of the smudging that went off the drawing, and I'm just going to do that by using the eraser and just kind of going back and forth over here. So now the best part about this drawing is really getting the hairs on the page, and in order to do so, I'm just going to grab a nice fine point pencil, and we're just going to start with this process of first things first. In this area, I'm going to just assume that there's a little bit less hair over here. And over here is kind of a medium set of hair, and over here you might have just hairs kind of going this way. So we'll kind of start here and work our way back. It's okay to have these kind of go off the arm as well. You definitely want them to kind of look like they go over the edge of the arm and the wrist over here. By the way, what I'm doing with that, if I were to zoom that in, is I'm starting and kind of going away, but I'm starting in a point hard and then moving it away. That kind of resembles the follicle piece that's kind of in the arm. So that's basically what I'm doing. And I'm just doing that ever so slightly. I'm not really pressing extremely hard, but you kind of have to repeat this process like, multiple times. And they do not, and they should not kind of all go in the same direction either. You should really try your best to get them a little random and a little all over the place for the most realistic look as possible. So we're going to do that. Make sure your pencil is as sharp as possible. You really want something that's quite sharp here. And if you ever feel that there's too much space between these hairs that you're drawing, you can go back and just add a few more in between them. Don't be afraid to add a little bit of curve on them, or some go up, some go sideways, some go, some go curvy. Don't be afraid to do that. That's what I'm doing here. Now the trick is, if you really want to draw the ridge of this wrist and this arm, I'll show you in a second, you might feel like you need to start changing the direction of these hairs, because at this point the hairs might actually start to, let me just fix this up here as well. The hairs might actually start to look like they're going a different direction, and that's exactly how you're going to create the illusion of a curved wrist and arm, right? So these arm hairs over here start to face down and point down, and this is how you're going to create that illusion of the 3D effect, okay? I'm just repeating that process here. Try not to have the hairs in a perfect line. They should not line up side by side. They are very obviously like sporadic and random in their positioning. So that's what I'm really trying to do here, even though there's a few times when I did have them side by side, so I want to try to avoid that. You want the hairs on the bottom to kind of look like they're coming off as well. It will look good if you can do that. And I also think that at the top, the arm hair could be just like a little bit longer, and don't be afraid to have them come off the top as well. So I'm just repeating this process. I'm not going to rush it. I'm not going to really jeopardize the drawing to kind of speed this part up. So follow along with me. Hopefully you're doing the same. If you're watching, great. Just follow along. Keep it going. Another interesting fact about hair, if we're talking about facts, is that people with red hair, typically the red hair doesn't turn gray in time. Red hair actually becomes more like a sandy color and just kind of fades into a sandy-like color in time. So I never knew that. Next time you see perhaps someone who is a bit older and they have, they're like a redhead, maybe look at their hair and realize that it's not actually like gray hair that you're looking at. You're actually looking at like a sandy-like color in the hair, which is really kind of interesting. I didn't know that. So hopefully you learned something new there as well. Again, at the top over here, I'm actually just kind of going just a bit longer because that's the top of the arm, and the hairs over there may actually look a bit longer to be more realistic, okay? I think around this area, people might have just a little bit less arm hair, kind of at the bottom of the arm. I think that might be true. I'm not a scientist or anything, but what I might do is just go shorter as I start to go down over here. Shorter and just a little more spaced out. I think that might look a little better, but I still want to use that pattern over here where we kind of face them down. So down here, you kind of face them down. And over here, you kind of face them this way. And around here, you kind of face. So in this area, what I'm doing is just kind of going like this. And that creates, that's the arm, right? So at the bottom, they point down. Over here, they point like that. And then, that's kind of the pattern that I just created over there. So hopefully you're seeing that. Hopefully this is coming together, nicely for you as well. I think the last thing I want to do is just kind of touch up some of the shades and the tones. At the bottom, I definitely want to make sure that there is a nice dark tone over here, and it looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking, otherwise. So hopefully you are as well. Hopefully this is working out for you. I think the very last thing is just to give it a quick, once over to just let it kind of, incorporate into each other. You don't see the veins as much, but that's okay. I think on an arm, you don't really want the veins to pop out and really look like they are, out of place, but you do see those dark shadows that were there. If you really want, you can kind of go back and accentuate those veins with just a little bit of brush, like very light and a very fine brush. but you can certainly go back and just kind of do one of these. So this might actually help you just get those veins back in sight, and even just having them there might actually look like a little more realistic. So I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, the facts and the drawing. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.